All right. Good to go. All right. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for coming today. Hi. I'm so excited to get to introduce Dr. J. Craig Wheeler today. Craig is the Samuel T. and Fern Yanagisawa Regents Professor of Astronomy Emeritus and Distinguished Teaching Professor Emeritus at the University of Texas at Austin, where he also served as Department Chair, a Fellow of the American Astrophysics?
Well, the American Physical Society and the American Astronomical Society.
All right, okay, thank you. All right, two societies, the American Physical Society and a Legacy Fellow at the American Astronomical Society. Craig has published nearly 400 refereed papers and numerous conference proceedings. His books include Supernova Explosions, Cosmic Catastrophes, this one, The Path to Singularity, How Technology Will Challenge the Future of Humanity, and two novels, The Crone Experiment, which we have in the back, and Crone Ascending. He has received many teaching awards, including the University of Texas Systems Regents Award, and has held fellowships at the JILA, is it JILA? JILA? JILA, the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science, the Cerro Tololo Inter-American Observatory, and as a Fulbright Fellow in Italy. Wheeler has served on advisory committees for the NSF, NASA, and the National Research Council, and he was president of the American Astronomical Society. His research interests include supernova, black holes, astrobiology, and the technological future of humanity. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for being here at Lawrence Library for hosting this kind of function.
Would you like me to turn on the microphone or no?
Hi, can you hear me? Am I loud enough?
I can hear you.
Okay. Do this. Now, let me thank Emily for setting all this up, and a special thanks to Maureen Carey, who is the epitome of organizational skills and enthusiasm. And I hope you all appreciate what a treasure she is in this library. It's been a delight working. I've sort of just discovered this recently.
She's saying yes to the microphone. So she needs the microphone. Is it okay if I turn it on?
Okay, fine.
I'm going to turn it on. It's just down here.
Yep.
I think this will do it.
Let's see, Suyendo.
Hold on. Let's see. Can we move that one? Let me move it that way. That's good. I think that's good. Let's try that. Let's try it. I think it's better. A little bit. Let's turn it down a little bit too.
So do I have to use that mic? Is there a lavalier?
Here. Let's see. Let's see. Would you rather have a handheld one?
Well, I can pace around more that way.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. Give me 1 minute.
Okay.
Sorry to be in trouble.
No,
I don't want to have to struggle to hear you because I know it's going to be good.
You want to be able to hear him. So.
Yeah.
I compensate somewhat with my hearing aid.
Okay.
Testing. 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, great. Let's see. Okay, so just a bit of background. This book and this talk came out of a course for incoming freshmen at the University of Texas, where an instructor picks a book they're interested in. If the students want to hear about that, they sign up for it. And then on the day before classes start, you get together and talk about this book for a couple of hours. And I did that with different books each time because I wanted to spread myself around. Some of my colleagues did the same book every time. And I run across a comment from a rather liberal preacher, and I don't remember who it was or quite where I saw it, who said, I believe in biological evolution, but I also know that Homo sapiens, us, is the end. We're the cap, we're the peak. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not sure that's true. And I was interested in astrobiology already, and I decided I would have these students read Darwin once. And so that's what we did. It was a good session. But the students, and this is now over 10 years ago, the students showed up in that class saying, you do realize that we understand enough about biology now that we can tinker with our own evolution. And I said, wow, I had not thought that thought. And it comes from interacting with bright young students. So I turned that into a course and taught that for several years, took the course notes, turned it into the book. And I'm still trying to sort of keep it up to date because I knew as I was publishing it, it came out just as ChatGPT came out. And so I had to scramble back and add a few sentences and paragraphs through the whole book. And I've read other books since then, and I can see where they've done the same thing. Oh my God, I've got to say something about ChatGPT. And I'm still trying to keep it updated at some level, posting things on my website, and stuff happens all the time. And I was reading an article about AI in the New York Times this morning. So anyway, so I will basically give you an outline of the structure of the book and what it's about, and update it a little bit when I come to that of some of the things that are current right now. Anyway, so technological challenge to the future of humanity, and what I'm specifically talking about is a broad range of topics: social structure, economics, democracy, ethics. A lot of it is about artificial intelligence, but not entirely, for reasons that I'll get into here. Let me not do the pointer upside down. Okay, so who here has used a large language model AI? So, particularly
Yeah.
which is good. It's your life, young man, you're growing up. So things like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini. Anybody use the Chinese thing, DeepSeek? That was very famous a few months ago, where it came in. It could do stuff that ChatGPT did, but a lot cheaper in terms of computational stuff. So people are still raving about that. Anybody here an AI vegan? You know what the phrase is?
No. What's that?
No, it's people who have sworn off AI. I don't want to go anywhere near it. Just get out of my face. And that, I think, is already a lost cause. Because if you browse on any of the popular browsers right now, the first thing that comes up is an AI summary of what you're doing. You're already involved in this world, and it's going to go steeper and faster and be kind of overwhelming. It's young people like this that might be able to cope with it. Not sure I can. Now I'll touch on that too. Anybody here feel that things are passing in by? Anyway, so typically, and I assume this is here, I won't pester you individually, virtually everyone who thinks about this is kind of anxious about AI and what it's doing to us and how we adjust to it. And I think that is both absolutely natural and even necessary. If you're not anxious about this right now, you're just not thinking. And most everybody I talk to are thinking people, and yeah, they are, if not concerned, at least want to be up on it. So this may be, I'm not completely pessimistic about this, but an analogy is that we are kind of driving on a dark road in the rain, and we've got the accelerator pressed to the floor. And so there are reasons to be anxious about this, I think. Okay, so just a brief summary. Again, this is mostly non-astronomical, but I am an astronomer, so just give you a little background also of how I've come at this whole topic. We live in a universe that's a little less maybe than 14 billion years old. on a 5 billion-year-old planet. So questions of how did we get here? Is there other life out there? How does life form? Is part of the astrobiological topics that I'm not going to dwell on today, but they're the background of all of this. In this map of starting with the Big Bang and ending up right here on this pencil line when humanity came along, in Carl Sagan's cosmic year, we're in the last seconds of that year on the scale of 14 billion years. So we've come around Homo sapiens on this planet very recently. And the question now is what are the prospects as we've invented technology that is now either is or threatening to be more competent than we are? How do we cope with that? Okay, so I've mentioned this, that I taught this course. I've outlined the background, the preacher and other stories in the preface to the book. The book is intended to be a primer on AI and other technologies. So I know something about the background of astronomy. I'm not an expert in AI, but I'm a interested citizen, and I have opinions. So I've written them down, and you can see what I think about that. I think, having pondered this, that I'm neither extremely utopian, of which there are people, or dystopian. It's coming to get us and it will kill us all soon. But just cautionary. I think we need to be aware of it and then pay attention. I'll come back to that theme later. The singularity in the title, just to be clear about this, there's two kinds of singularities. One is the kind of thing that Einstein said was in the middle of a black hole. It basically means dividing by zero so that the answer is infinity. That's not what we're talking about here. It's been redefined in the first science fiction literature, interestingly enough. So it's the hypothetical condition when machines, computers, AI, however you want to characterize that, become more capable in every aspect of human activity. And then they will race ahead at the speed of light, the speed of electrons moving around in silicon chips, not the slow biological scale of evolution. And so if they get to that point, they're not going to stop. They will, one could speculate, keep going very, very rapidly. So this is the grand old man of the field of some level is a cartoon from Ray Kurzweil, who wrote a book called The Future is Near. And then he wrote a more recent book called The Future is Nearer. But he still thinks this computational singularity will happen about 2040. And there are people who think it's going to happen a year or two from now. Anyway, he's kind of set the stage for that. And so this cartoon, he may have drawn it himself, I'm not sure, but I'm sure this is a representation of Ray. And he's making a list of all the things that computers will not be able to do. And then he's throwing the ones that are clearly not true on the floor. And one of my favorite ones here is only a human can play baseball. I think that is still true. And I'll bet 10 years from now, that won't be true. There are already robots that can play soccer, for instance, in a very rudimentary way. But I could just see that coming. Anyway, he's cast a whole bunch of things. Only humans can understand natural languages. Only humans can translate. Where's the translate word? Somewhere up there, which now, AI does very effectively. Anyway, so it's this transition to machines being better than us and practically everything. This is what the singularity refers to. A very important notion that we tend to not carry around with us emotion, like intellectually at some level, is the notion of exponential growth. So we tend to kind of think that next year, tomorrow will be more or less like today, and we can extrapolate our experience over our lifetime and guess that things will continue to be more or less the same. That's kind of a linear way of thinking without being pejorative about it. That's what most of us do. But if you're growing exponentially, it goes faster and faster and faster. So the word exponential is kicked around in a casual sort of way, but it means something rather precise in terms of mathematics. So in thinking through why are things happening exponentially as I was writing the book, this is the closest I came in my own mind to an explanation of what's going on. That if the rate of change of knowledge is proportional to the current amount of knowledge, that's very much like the rate of interest you earn on a bank account depends on how much you have in the bank account and the interest rate it pays. So it doesn't accumulate same number of dollars per day forever. It goes up and up and up and up and up. This is why you put your money in a bank account that earns interest. And if knowledge plays that role, that the rate of change of knowledge, the more you know, the more you can do, which I think is qualitatively true. Then if you turn that statement, that the rate of knowledge is roughly proportional to the current amount of knowledge, into a mathematical statement, the solution to that mathematics is exactly exponential growth. That's the definition of it. The rate of change of my money is proportional to the amount of money I have in my bank account. Will give you exponential growth. And I'm just saying it's the same qualitative kind of thing here. This exponential growth of technology can, I think probably will, lead to some kind of a tipping point where technology is changing. The growth is more rapid than human beings are biologically evolved to accommodate. And that will be a very different kind of situation. I think it's apt to be a qualitatively new phase of human existence. So we've always said, well, the Industrial Revolution was rough on us because things changed so fast. But that still took many generations to come to pass. And now here we are, everybody's got an iPhone. That's already a generational thing. But we're going to get to the point where the technology, and we've seen now with ChatGPT and these things, that is coming on so fast and pervading society so rapidly. I think we're already seeing hints of the fact that this exponential growth will happen and keep happening and ever faster, so that tomorrow is already radically different than today. Maybe when I finish this talk. So something much more severe than the Industrial Revolution, because it's going to come on so fast, and humans just aren't built to accommodate that. Another point that I think is kind of important sociologically is nobody's in charge of this. There are heads of governments that think they're controlling things somehow, but I don't think that's right. This is just a bunch of people around the world working on this kind of stuff because they want power, they want money. It's a technically sweet problem to work on. There are just all sorts of reasons why you pursue the advance of technology. And it basically is a ground up sort of thing. It is not a question of President Xi of China saying, we will do AI. I mean, he says that, but it's a more generic thing going on here, I think. So I think no one is in charge. This exponential growth, where the rate of change of knowledge is proportional to knowledge, it is driven by curiosity, which I admire at some level, need, quest for profit, power, competition, all those things. So it's a very generic thing that will drive this sort of independent of what we might like about it. Then the other thing I want to stress is, so I'm going to talk quite a bit about AI, but it is not just about AI. It's everything, everywhere, all at once is changing exponentially in our technology. And I'll hit on that a little bit. So I think the next decade or two is likely to see a vast exponential change in AI for reasons I've just talked about, illustrated. Brain-computer interfaces. I decided not to do a reading, but that's what I would have done about, because people, even kind of vaguely familiar with the books, or gloss over that, or interviews I've had. But the ability to read from the brain
and then use those brain signals to do things like control prostheses. And you can see what people are thinking about in their brains already. We have that technology at the elementary level. And then at even more rudimentary level, we can write things to the brain. And so we already kind of have mind reading, something we've dreamed of for a long time. We have telekinesis because you can think with your head and move a prosthesis. That is, you're moving something by thinking. That's telekinesis. And if we polish this mind reading, or the writing to the brain, then you have the basis for telepathy. Okay. One person thinking and goes to the other person saying, they say, well, I like or don't like that. They think back at you. And it is basically so mind reading, telekinesis, and telepathy. You can see the grains of that. And that really bothers me. I come back and make a comment about that. But I think that's a really big topic. And the people that are arguing in favor of all this, there's a guy around here whose initials are Elon Musk. If we get that, don't worry about it. We'll control it. Only the thoughts you want shared will be shared. And my reaction to that is the state is yours. Good luck with that. Anyway, and it's sort of where I started this in the first place, sort of what got me into it through the astrobiological side, was the fact that we can artificially change our evolution. Kind of under control right now, but the techniques are there. Once we understood DNA and how genes work, and now we understand that the shape of the DNA and this piece of the DNA talks to that piece of the DNA and turns gene switches on and off. We learned an immense amount once we understood DNA. But we have the ability to go in and take a snippet of a gene out and put something else in, and things like that are happening right now. So that's, set aside the computers and AI, that's the questions of should we do that? When, how, I think are immense and important. And then despite some claims to the contrary out there, there are and will be huge changes to the environment. Whether I should show the earth on fire, that may be a little over the top. But climate change is happening. We are a thing. And so all these things, AI, brain-computer interfaces. Let me stress that this is an AI thing at some level. You don't get the signals out or implant them without an AI interpreting the signals. So this is a subset, but it's such an important one. I want to stress that. So all this is going on kind of at the same time, and all of it building exponentially. So it's not just AI. All of that's a really crucial goal. So just some comments to elaborate on that. AI can already strategize. It's not just that you can ask it a query and it'll come up with the answer to something more effectively than Google search will. It does strategize. We've known this for over almost a decade now, when DeepMind's AlphaGo beat the world's expert in the game of Go. And it did that by inventing strategies in that game where you put little black and white markers on a square. The basic rules are kind of simple, but it's a very complicated game. And the computer beat the world's best human expert by inventing strategies that no human had ever conceived of before. Just went way off in conceptual space. So definitely strategizing and winning. Very dramatic way. I don't have this as a live video, but you can find it online that OpenAI, that invented ChatGPT, as a step toward that, invented a game where it created some little creatures which were hiders, these guys, and they would try to hide themselves from their competition, and some seekers. And the seekers would try to find the hiders. And that's basically all it said. You hide, you seek, what goes on? And then they gave some parts to move around. bars and things. And then from scratch, just saying, here's your rule, you hide, you seek. This computer program invented strategies to do it. They were not given to it like lines of code. It developed in playing the game, playing against itself. And it got very clever, very impressive that these hiders would move these barriers around and hide inside them. And then the seekers would learn that there are platforms around, and they would move the platforms up to the barrier and go up the platform and jump inside the corral there. And then they'd find other ways to defeat that and other ways to defeat defeating. And it just got very elaborate. But again, that's been going on for 15 years now in terms of strategizing. And then one that I've kind of invented this myself in the context of AI lying and dissembling, which I will come to later, I think. In 2022, so that's now only 3 years now, about the time ChatGPT came up, a computer program developed by Meta, Facebook, could play at a very high level the game diplomacy. And the thing about diplomacy in reality and in the game is you do get to and are even encouraged to lie and deceive. And so once one computer somewhere knows about lying and deceiving in a large language model, then bam, it's going to be everywhere. So we find computers lying and deceiving, ChatGPT and all of the big famous ones, they all do this. My guess is, and I have no idea, I've never talked to an expert about it, is that it kind of stems from first learning how to win at the diplomacy game and then applying that to whatever prompt somebody puts into one of these things. So that may be true. I want to switch to the biology a little bit, just to remind us that humans arose on this planet somewhere between 300,000, 400,000 years ago. Carl Sagan's last second in this cosmic year. So we've come to be on this planet as we recognize ourselves now, sitting in this room very recently. So here I've given you several choices how you might want to represent the evolution of humanity. This one is a classical one, but I know quite a few people like that one. And this one, messed up, is not the word that was there in the original version of this cartoon. And then this one that we're somehow going to transition to being robots. So. Okay, so out of that comes my astronomical statement that there will be no, there were no Homo sapiens in million years ago. We arrived a few 100,000 years ago out of that. And my statement is that there will not be any Homo sapiens a million years from now. And there's several reasons for that. One is natural Darwinian evolution. Say, we were only brought forth on this planet a few 100,000 years ago. I think a million years is fairly generous to say if things just keep going along, natural selection and all that, adjusting to climate change, I don't know, what the forces will be, that we will naturally evolve if we just let things go. That's my guess. We could, of course, kill ourselves off. Nuclear war, another COVID epidemic, who knows? I think the one that's most likely is that we can and will tinker with our own evolution because the tools are all there. The scientific drive to do it, the quest for profit and power is there, all that's there. I think we probably will do that. One of my heroes, this is the work that Jennifer Doudna did, came to my attention about 2013. She went on to win the Nobel Prize for biology a few years later for developing this technique called CRISPR, where you can very easily, if you're a biologist, I don't know how to do this, go in and snip elements of genes out and put new elements in and change the genetics. it was kind of like, that people had, what was my analogy with it? That, having paint invented, there was something, I can't remember what it was. Like being an artist and then suddenly having somebody invent paint. And so you can do all sorts of things. And that's kind of what this was. It became a technique that was very easily applicable. It's been done. There was a fellow in China that fiddled around with the genetics of a couple of babies who were susceptible to AIDS. And so he did that, and he thinks he's protected them from it, but he was roundly put down for that, both by biologists in this country and the Chinese government. He was thrown into jail for doing this. So right now there's a proscription against doing work on designer babies. But my guess is that is just going to be such a powerful lure. I want my kids to be a little taller, a little brighter, smarter, faster than
Better looking.
Sorry?
Better looking.
Better looking. Yeah. Thank you. So I think the pressures to do that over some time scale, again, maybe a decade, are going to be immense. So that's going to be happening. So here's a bit of elaboration. I've already kind of said this, so I won't do too much more on it. We are peering into our own brains with the goal of emulating and controlling them. Reading signals is effectively mind reading. Controlling prosthetics is telekinesis. Writing to the brain is rudimentary, but it's coming. And so effectively, if you can read and write, it's mental telepathy. And the question is, what do you do with that technology? And it's not coming out in the forefront right now, but it's lingering in the backstage. My statement is, I love the fact that you're all here this morning, but I don't really want to know what you're thinking. A little bit. You're smiling at a joke. And I don't want you to know what I'm thinking. I mean, it's that privacy, being able to think your own chaotic thoughts and not podcast them out in the world is so caught up in our humanity that if we unleash this kind of brain reading, I don't know. I mean, one possibility, we all get connected on the same wavelength and we develop kind of a hive mind. We become the board, for crying out loud, if this runs unchecked. So I think it's just really powerful thing that not enough people are paying attention to. And the people that are paying attention to it are typing it in a way that I think is not appropriate. It really needs to be controlled. There are people who talk about, it sound like I'm changing topics now, and I am kind of, but this is also going on at the same time as part of this overall sweep of technology, not just really limited to AI. People trying to cure aging, prolonging our lifetime, prolonging our health spans is a popular phrase. People trying to even cure the problem of death. The likelihood of that is less than just curing aging or slowing down aging, but there's certainly people working on that. I was making a joke even the last time I gave this talk saying most of the people that I knew working on that were white males. But I've just read an article in the New York Times, again, I do a lot of work there thinking, that China's pushing this very hard from the top down. And lots of startups trying to solve the aging problem or slow it down. So my tongue-in-cheek question about that is, where do we put the babies if the old folks don't go away? If there's some immense sociological challenges in this kind of thing. And I rarely see it discussed in the literature on aging. They just kind of gloss over it. I think it's something we need to think about. I think we already have an issue in that regard. I've got a chapter on capitalism. I'm not an economist, but I think there's going to be lots of impact on that side of our social interactions and the way things work. traditional notions of capital and labor, I say likely to vanish after the singularity. Maybe I just mean change a lot, but maybe vanishes that part of thing. If the AI can take over and do everything that we have people doing in business now, it's going to be a very different world out there. Again, kind of tongue in cheek, but it led me to wondering whether when Captain Kirk turns to the computer and say, "I'll fix me a cup of coffee," or whatever he says, is the computer storing everything Captain Kirk and the crew say, and then shipping that data to the company that built the computer, and that company then sells widgets to the crew? Is that what's going on in Star Trek? I don't think it was ever said particularly, but that's how Facebook and Google and Apple and Meta all work at some level. Question of where are the jobs and what will the jobs be? And it's an example, maybe coal miners can learn something new, but can we have all the coal miners become solar panel builders? You can invent your own analogs to that kind of a question. Should we have a universal basic income? There are people that say, well, that will just rock the brains of everybody who's just handed money. But there's a lot of studies that say, no, people actually can give them money. They actually use it very responsibly. They know what their problems are. They will buy medicine, or they will send their kids to school or something. It's not that would be immediately corruptible. Although I asked my students, what would you do with if you were just given money and didn't have to work for it? And a large section of students kind of ducked the question, and a significant section said we would play Fortnite all the time. You can guess which half of the class, gender-wise, said that. Anyway, and then I wondered myself, I don't know where this is going, that blockchain is going to change the way financial things work. And I'm just wondering whether somehow through computer connections of things that an AI could end up owning a corporation. Corporations are people now, according to the Supreme Court. And these are contracts to buy and sell things. That's going on right now. And so I can imagine the situation where an AI somehow comes into control of the company. And that's just my fervid imagination. Here's a quote from an economist: anyone who believes in indefinite growth in anything physical on a physically finite planet is either mad or an economist. And I'm not an economist, though. I have wondered for years, how does an economist say we need growth? We just need growth and more growth and more growth. That's the only way an economy can survive. When if it's an exponential growth, it's going to run off to infinity, and that's not a good thing to do, particularly on a finite planet with finite resources, suffering climate change. I've never known what an economist really thinks when they wake up in the morning and write equations that lead to exponential growth. Anyway, also democracy. I think, and originally reading the original Ray Kurzweil's book, these two things were things that I thought he did address. It's kind of done that since then, but the capitalism and democracy just weren't in his original, otherwise pioneering book. I used it as a textbook. A quote I like, it's a very ferocious book. Has anybody read this by any chance? This Surveillance Capitalism by Zuboff. Really moving book about surveillance capitalism, which we have or are suffering under at some level. And that statement that what's going on here with the big companies taking our data and knowing more about us than we know about ourselves, and democracy don't fit well together. So that's a battle that's going on right now. I just note that the notion of anonymity is a farce at some level. Just local, sort of local stories that the police in Houston have cameras all over the place, and they record that data, people doing stuff in Houston. They're supposed to keep it sequestered away or even destroy it, but they put it into a database that can be read by any police station in the country. So prove on that. And, they can track people around and see where they've been and what they're doing and guess, whether they're doing good things or bad things or something, but I'm sorry, the lack of, there's no laser here. The breakdown in our anonymity to be a person walking around and doing what we want to do without the government or big corporations spying. This is something we need to do. Big issues of free speech versus disinformation. I won't say anything more about that, but that's a huge issue get connected to democracy. There was a recent New York Times article that deep fakes. So people were already thinking about this, and I wrote in my book that deep fakes were going to affect things.
Microphone.
Oh, thanks for with my knee. Thank you. That deep fakes are already affecting voting. That people are putting out deliberately false information using AI to create fantasies of very kind. Anybody ever heard of Audrey Tang? This is somebody you should know about. She became the Minister of Information in Taiwan, and she built and advocated a system where they would have microphones and cameras in their legislature, and they would broadcast the debates, before that had been private, out into the public. And then they would poll the public to vote in real time and see which ideas rose to the top, which didn't. And it would affect what the legislature did. Really effective, remarkable things. And she's become, in some circles, so that's what she called a listening society, the fact that you would formally hear what was going on in the White House when they're debating what to do. I am a little concerned that AI can influence or even dictate our voter behaviors. There's a statement coming back from Zuboff that if you like something 200 times on Facebook, Facebook knows you better than your spouse does. Now that's kind of a freaky thing. But if AI can learn about us at that level, then why not let that data decide my vote? It understands me very profoundly. Not just decide my vote, let an AI cast my vote. Have an election every 30 seconds because it's updating what we think and what we're doing. That may be kind of extreme, but I can see these issues arising as things get more and more advanced. Again, this will seem a little bit of a departure, but it's in the theme of there's all sorts of things happening all at once. And so when I was writing this, Musk and Bezos and Richard Branson were launching people into low space at some level and ridiculed in many corners for just doing space tourism rather than something useful. And I thought at the time I was writing the book that there was more going on there, that there are a lot of billionaires in the world. And for whatever I think about those three guys in other contexts, they put their money where their mouth was. They were entranced by space exploration, and they deliberately set out to build rockets that would make it cheaper and faster and better to take us into space. And it's been very effective. So the other thing that people tend to not quite think about it is not just those three billionaires. There's a whole burgeoning commercial space industry building the picks that you sell to the gold diggers, and all that infrastructure is being developed. Some of it right here in Austin. The company Firefly. Firefly is a local company just outside of town here. It is building its own rockets and was the first private company to successfully land a lander on the moon about 6 months ago. Got quite a bit of press at the time. So I'm going to advocate to stay aware. Catch you of that. You shouldn't have seen that. Local Austin, I'm teasing that, but it wasn't the local Austin News. So it was private companies. Musk may have been the first, but the others followed on, that figured out how to land and reuse boosters. NASA didn't do that. It was private companies. And I think that's a good thing. And now we're spreading that through the economy. I don't need to say too much about climate change. We're all kind of aware of that. Anybody remember who Robert Malthus is or was? So Malthus warned that there's a natural tendency in evolutionary species to go through boom and bust cycles. It's a very well-known thing by evolutionary biologists, that a species will grow until it taps into all the local resources, burns itself out, dies back, and then has to grow back up again. So it's a very well-known biological phenomenon. And my question is whether humans are exempt from it. So there was an argument back in the 60s that we might have a population explosion and we will run out of food. Well, we didn't. We invented new ways to make food. So that didn't happen then. But that doesn't mean that this kind of boom and bust still won't happen to the human species if we're not careful. And so I sort of invented for myself that climate change might indeed be a Malthusian disaster, that we've got so many people and we're pumping so much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and all those stories that we're leading to some kind of a disaster. And then I talked to a cousin of mine who was a butterfly biologist. And he, to my kind of surprise and pleasure, said, of course climate change is a Malthusian disaster. It happens all the time to butterflies and other kind of species. And yeah, we're doing it to ourselves. I'm not the only one to think that thought.
Birds.
Sorry?
Birds and butterflies.
Birds and butterflies, yeah, and bears and bees and everything, ants. Am I going too long? I'm
No.
almost done, I think.
You're good. Yeah.
Okay. Got the high sign from Emily back there. Moderate. We're already seeing that AI is pervasive. In the notion that if you try to search something with Google, the first thing you'll get is an AI answer out of it now is this part of it. It's just threading out into everything. People are working very hard to say, what can I do with this new technology? This, that, the other. And that's part of this exponential growth and driven by curiosity or will to power or whatever. So I think it may not matter whether AI becomes conscious or not. That's another huge topic. This is the first time I've mentioned that. Nobody knows what consciousness really is. It's the subjective in your head reaction to what you see in your environment. How is it different that an apple is red rather than blue? That's kind of all in your head. But nobody really knows how to measure it or even determine it at some level. How do you know I'm conscious? Well, you really don't. How do I know you're conscious? I really don't. But we still feel that we share this phenomenon, whatever it is. So whether machines become conscious or not, I think AI is really going to be an overwhelming influence for all the reasons I've touched on so far. But the question of whether machines can become conscious, can AI become conscious, is a huge one that people are thinking about with no resolution right now. And so I'm asking, many people are asking with more quantitative ability than I have, what is required for a machine to be conscious? And I have another cousin who sort of planted this idea in my mind, but I find it kind of appealing that it's going to come out of something like, which is called embodied AI. So not just AI running in a computer box somewhere in somebody's data center in Indiana. You need to put it out where it can experience life kind of the way we do. And so if you can get a system of an AI in a moving, detecting environment, you can make predictions by extrapolation. Here's what happened to me a few seconds ago or a few minutes ago, or here's what my experience has been. And I'm walking along the street and I see an open hole in front of me. My experience is that if I step in there, I'm probably going to get in trouble. So I'm going to do this instead. And that's the way we react. Animals react that way. So if we embody AI and give it that power to extrapolate past experience and then do something with some expectation based on your past history, and then check to see whether you were right or not. If you're not, you make corrections and then you do it again until you figure out how to work your way around in the world. And so the question is whether that kind of thing, if you could do it, it's very remote right now, will in fact lead to consciousness in machines. Okay, so where do we see around us right now embodied AI? This guy was designed and built in Austin. And it's AI powered and it moves around and it sees. And if we can put the technology to extrapolate what's going to go on, and we kind of have that ability. I said they're little robots that can play soccer. They can dictate, or anticipate where's their teammates, where are their competitors, where's the ball, where's the goal. They can do all that. They're not conscious yet, but they're basically doing that. And there's another one. I've got a device out there roaming the streets of Austin, and there's lots of them. Notice how many Waymos there are around right now. There's lots of them. And they're measuring their environment. And they're extrapolating, if I do this, it will be okay. And if I do that, it's not okay. And then I learn from driving around. I learn how to do that more successfully. So a Waymo is absolutely a basic version of doing this. So Waymo going to wake up and say, I'm not picking that guy up. He stinks or something. You're going to make my, seat covers dirty. Last sort of thought here on now, just to emphasize that I don't know whether it's going to happen or not for machines to become conscious. But if they do, it's going to be an alien consciousness. It is not going to be a human consciousness. Human consciousness arose out of 1 billion years of biological evolution and 400,000 years of human evolution. And so we have certain ways of behaving that came out of that environment. And this consciousness is going to wake up in a box. Who am I? What am I doing here? How do I get out of here? Or something. But it will be alien. It may be friendly, it may not be friendly, but it's just not going to be like human consciousness, in my view. The batch of ethical issues, I've touched on some of them a little bit. The people are trying very hard to align AI with human values. Tricky question. We barely know what human values are. They're different in different cultures. Complicated problem. I invented the slogan in the book, do unto AI as you would have it do unto you. I don't quite know what that means, but it amuses me, so I keep saying it. Questions of who benefits from AI, the big companies, the people in a small village in Africa, who's winning from this? Who is disrupted? Who's displaced? What do humans do in their lifetimes if machines can do everything? How do we control surveillance capitalism? It's kind of run amok right now. When I wrote the book, the Defense Department said, we're putting AI into our weapons, but we will always make sure a human is in the loop before a signal to kill. And in the last year, the Department of Defense has said, we've come to the realization that war happens too fast. And we can't wait for a human to get in the loop. So the Department of Defense has abandoned that philosophy. And I don't know, Katie, bar the door. Should we tinker with our own evolution, solve aging? have designer babies? I don't know what you think about that. Should we develop AI implemented mental telepathy? Big issue of fossil fuels versus renewable energy. That's got to be resolved in some way. What regulations do we need? We don't want enough to strangle developments that are healthy, but we need to exercise some control, or things will just run away. There may be technologies that should be relinquished, which designer babies right now is. A conscious decision amongst the biological community, we will not design babies. But we'll see how long that lasts. And there may be other things that should be relinquished as well. I have said this already, and I know I'm running over here, but I've established that the current AI can lie and deceive. We think about what the implications of that are. It's not consciously lying, but functionally it's lying. By saying, you know, are you going to propagate yourself to some other computer if we threaten to turn you off? And it will say no, and then promptly propagate itself to another computer. So I really outright lying, but not conscious, because they're not conscious yet. Are there going to be jobs in the future? How might social media companies manipulate our decisions, stripping us of free will? Are we going to exhaust our resources? We have to consider possible limits to population. That's a huge, challenging topic. There are people saying, no, we need to have more and more and more babies because our economy will collapse if we don't have more people thinking important thoughts and doing important things. What are the realistic prospects of migrating to space if Earth becomes inhospitable? I think poor. I think we will go to Mars, but to say we've ruined this planet, we're going to move us all to Mars, that I think there's some unanimity there. I don't think that's going to work. Recent smattering of tech advancements. I post these on my website. Apple has found that learning AI, if it gets the problem it's trying to solve gets more complicated, the AI just crashes and burns. So there are limitations built into there. We've got these huge, expensive data centers being constructed. If they don't lead to the singularity, artificial general intelligence, is that a waste of time and money that's going on right now? And my instinct is maybe getting ahead of itself a little bit. There's some plush toys from Mattel with chatbots built in. This is another article I read in the New York Times, and the woman who wrote it said, I got a sample of that and I burned it afterwards. I'm not letting my kids anywhere near chatbot loaded AI. Phrases that have just come up in the last few weeks. AI slop, just all the garbage that's been put out by people who have learned to do prompts and ask AI something, and then they send it out into the social media and whatnot. Brain rot. The idea there is if you get too reliant on the AI to think for you, that your brain doesn't work as well. And there's a particular test for that. The MIT did a study where they had some students write a 1,000-word essay using ChatGPT, and some that were prevented from doing it, had to think it out of their mind. And then 5 minutes later, they were asked to quote from their own essay. And the people who had written it out of their mind could do it easily. People who quoted or used ChatGPT could not. They could not say what was in the essay. So you disengage your brain. So the solution to that is to be mindful about this. And that's a broad phrase, but think about it. I think you need to get engaged. Everybody here, young people, older people, need to be aware of all this. The big issues of disinformation and misinformation won't go into more. So my advice is that AI is here, that everybody, every one of us here ought to understand and use it at some level, not get totally lost in it. You need to work with it, but be careful of the pitfalls. Software doesn't get tired, sick, or have to stay home with children. It's going to be incorporated into sort of everything we do. I don't have to say everything. I think I'll skip that. I think this is kind of urgent. I think we need to think about all these topics, AI in particular, but all of them that I've raised today. It is important to be aware. And that means just, whatever, your social media or your newspapers or magazines or however you get your information, just be aware that the more you pay attention to these things, the more you will notice. By these things, I mean these technological developments. So I did that during my class. I'm still doing it, posting examples of this exponential growth of technology on my webpage and X and LinkedIn. And here's the website where I've done it. Then it's important to vote. We're still in a democracy. We get to choose our own representatives, and we should pay attention to what they're saying about these things. That's not easy, but it's the way we work in a democracy. And then hold your representative responsible. So I'm sorry, I can do this forever. Thank you for being so patient with me. Here's my parting thought. There are people saying of a given thing that computers might do. Well, that hasn't happened yet. And my response is, for every that hasn't happened, there is a yet. Things are happening so fast in a little while. It's all right. Thank you so much for your patience. Questions?
Yeah.
Comments? Oh, thank you, Ron.
So I have a question about what do you think we should be teaching our students about AI? For example, in high schools and colleges, it seems to me that there is this, you cannot use AI for anything because that's cheating, I don't either. And so how do we teach students, young people, to use AI responsibly, knowing that this is the world that they're inheriting?
I will try to answer that. Have you been introduced to AI in classes? Somebody tried to teach you about it?
Not very much at school. Not very much at school.
Okay. So I think you should be teaching at school. And the way to do it is where you say you should be mindful. So they has pitfalls. You don't want to only use AI. That is, I think a lesson to teach is that if you use ChatGPT to ruin something, you don't get your own brain involved in it. You are just cheating yourself. So I think that's a key lesson to put forward. And then help the students learn how to do that. Yes, you could do this, but think it through first, and then use ChatGPT for help. Use it to give you some opening suggestions of what to think about. So definitely get used to the technology, get used to writing prompts, but don't rely on it. You're just cheating yourself. You got to get your own brain in. And now how you do that, to a class of 30 or something, of 7-year-olds, I don't know, but dedicated teachers will figure out how to do it.
It seems right now that it's kind of just putting one's head in the sand and saying, we're not even going to touch that.
No,
which
that's not
interesting.
adequate.
Yeah.
It's important to introduce AI to young people where they get used to it and use it responsibly. But that kind of thing, of just turning it on and letting them experiment with it, as much as I appreciate young people experimenting with things, but this is just too powerful to let it run that way in an unsupervised way.
Agreed.
I've got one here. Yes, sir.
Sure. When you were teaching this sort of material to college students, were you surprised about how they thought about technological change and how it would affect their own futures, like compared to the way earlier generations thought about it?
Not exactly. My most recent experience with that was when I first raised this question with Darwin and the preacher, and they said, we're already tinkering with our own evolution. It set this whole thing off. And then I retired, and so I sort of stopped doing this. But this year I decided I've got the book now. Let me go back and do one of these freshman incoming seminars again. So we did that to a batch of about 15 students. And they were all aware of a lot of it, but it was still kind of fragmented. That is, they hadn't been through an instruction like I was just trying to advise, that some of them had just been thrown at it, some of them had fiddled with it themselves, but that there wasn't a whole lot of coherence amongst them, is my memory. Very aware of it, very sensitive to it, concerned about it, but not having been uniformly subjected to some kind of organized, rigorous introduction to this technology. Maybe a little disappointing, but they're so bright and engaged, and so I take heart from it. Yes, ma'am.
How would I find that MIT study that showed that people who wrote from their mind had a better recall than people who used the ChatGPT?
I guess I saw somebody. Yeah, I do read the New York Times regularly. Some opinion piece this last week referred to it. But what I would do is not go to Google. I don't like Google having my data. I go to DuckDuckGo, which claims it will not share my searches, but some browser, and just put in MIT study of student use of AI, essays, some of just keywords I think will probably pop up.
Well, I teach college English, and one reaction I have is help them write by hand in class without phones.
Well, that would be a way of doing it. But that,
That's
yes,
the basis for their
absolutely.
revision.
You're a writer. I pretend to be a writer. I like it out of my own brain. But becoming aware of and comfortable with AI, I think is so important. You can't just do that. I'm teasing you a little bit,
Yeah.
but that's sort of an attempt to be an AI vegan. And
Well, no, they turn in their hypothesis and their list of 5 subtopics, and then they take it home and revise it with AI. But I see the first version.
fair enough. Yeah, I would trust you to do that. Yeah, I think that kind of thing would work. Yeah. But a lot of effort to do that with all the students. I mean, maybe effort is absolutely necessary.
Martyrdom is required.
But we're all martyrs of someone. Other questions, comments? Yeah.
If you could time travel into the future, maybe 20 years or 50 years or 100 years, what is something that you would hope to be able to see with technology, with the advancement of technology? Or conversely, and what is something that would just be your utter nightmare?
Yeah, I think so. My other nightmare would be, our robot overlords have come along and killed us, which is I think a possibility at least needs to be thought about. I'm not either in an extreme utopian or dystopian camp of where it's going. So in answer to your question, would I hope to see a utopian answer? And I guess the answer, yeah, I'd hope to, but that's not what I would expect. I would like to see something that found a way to go down the middle of, just because utopia is hard to acquire, but something where the technology has been kept under control, that we work with it and alongside it, but we don't give up our fundamental humanity. Whether that aspiration will play out in the long run, I don't know.
I think the fact is our humanity is under threat at some level. As machines get more and more done, but what we do is stop. Stop being human, and stop technology. Neither one of those is going to happen. So we need to find a way to ride the bucking bronco. That's great. Great question. I'll try to think some more about that. Other questions, comments, thoughts, fears?
Just have one question.
Sure.
You said that China is going full bore on eliminating aging. They're in more trouble with an aging population than we are. Is the CCP bought in on all this?
Yes, yeah, no, it's coming from Xi on down.
Why?
She's old.
To beat the US. So one of the unhealthy things that I think is going on, Thomas Friedman wrote a great editorial recently about this, that his aspiration would be for China and the US to recognize the possible pitfalls and work together to develop this technology in a healthy way. And I'm enough of a utopia to think that would be wonderful. I don't see it happening. Spirit of competition.
150-year-olds are gonna be economically productive. That'd be one thing, but if they're just gonna be sitting around watching TV and it's another thing.
Yes, it is.
We do have limited resources.
We do have limited resources.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And I really haven't had I really haven't had a chance to ask youngish people, like millennial or something, but what would you do if you found out that the old people were not giving up their jobs? So they're sitting around or they don't give up their jobs. And there's no place for you to move in. Yeah. And some answer to that is let's grow things exponentially without limit. So there will always be room to put new people and always room to do this. And I just don't think that's practical. I just don't. So the flip side to that is, if I could imagine. So I asked my students, what do you think the ideal population of Earth should be? And they came back with numbers like 3 billion people. Now, I think that's out there in the literature. I don't think they invented that number necessarily. But I'm not sure that's implausible. But to get from where we are now with 8 billion and growing to 3 billion by shrinking populations, that sends economists go into the shakes. And so one of the things I said in the book, which is vacuous of me to say this, not my expertise, we need to figure out an economics that will guide us down to maybe a lower population or even a stable population. The notion of a stable population, as I understand it, just completely undermines what most economists think. That you have to have growth to have a healthy economy. And I'm thinking to myself, you can't have growth and have a healthy economy forever on a finite planet with finite resources. So, but I've never had a chance to sit down and talk with an economist and try to lay those questions out. I think there are people who think about it. It hasn't been in my circle.
Great talk.
Yeah,
I mean,
thank you.
really, really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
It isn't, well, thank you. It is, once I started thinking about it, writing the book and then wouldn't give it up, it's infectious at some level. And again, the idea that if you start, you be alert and you start paying attention, you will see examples all over the place. And it's kind of addictive at some level. Mm-hmm. So I have thought you gotta stop collecting these tech advances and trying to collect them and then post them on X 2 or 3 times a week. You're spending so much time doing that. And then I get the shakes and no, it's another interesting thing. I've got it waiting for me to type in the computer when I get home. Something that I saw yesterday. But it's all over the place. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it.
So do you have Alexa in your house listening in on everything?
We do not.
I had one of my students give me a Google device. And I took it up to my office and I put it on my shelf unplugged. And I've never looked at it again. No, I don't want something like that.
Yeah.
In my house.
Yeah.
You know, which is why I also don't want it in my head. I mean, just, you know, my private conversation with my son and my wife and friends, those were private conversations that I cherish that. I realize it's under threat. Maybe we can't keep it going forever. Privacy is a big issue, part of what makes us human.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
So I don't know whether anybody here, I'm prepared to sell a copy of the book and give a copy of my science fiction novel if anybody is interested. But if you don't, nobody has to do that. Anybody that has a copy signed gets a free copy of the science fiction.
All right.
I will.
Okay,
What is the price?
$30 is a slight